Woohoo! It's 6:09 on Wednesday afternoon, and hopefully this will be our last major automation exercise, and I could take a breather. But we want to walk through it, and I think it's important to note. In section 5, scenario 3, we're going to have the entire process be automated and paperless. Keep in mind, DocuSign does not replace the negotiating process. Once the details of the contract are determined, the entire signing workflow can then be set up within DocuSign. That's important to know. The agent might not necessarily go through all these steps in the exercise in their day-to-day business. However, it's a good example of how DocuSign can automate everything for us. In this scenario, the buyers are going to counter the counter offer sent by the sellers. In the earlier exercise, the buyer accepted it. We're still in the same 2019 Starship Enterprise Drive transaction, but the buyers are going to counter the counter. The buyers initially offered 600. The sellers countered at 615. Now the buyers are going to counter the seller's counter offer at 610. All this is noted in the scenario 3 in your books. Okay? So what are we going to do? To actually complete that process, once again, we're in Zip Forms, and we're going to open up the offer 2019 Starship transaction. I'm going to go to documents. Now, if this were the case, and in the earlier exercise, we did not accept the counter, you would not see this folder here. But we have a counter from the sellers that we're going to have the buyer sign and counter, and that counter is going to be stored in another new folder which we will label counter offer from buyers. To create a subfolder, I select sign documents, I select add a folder, and then I'm going to say counter from buyers. You have to give it a name that's meaningful to you. It's obviously in the order in which you create them, but what you can see through creating the folders through this series of exercises, that all of our files are stored in one place and they're labeled in a cleanly defined folder structure. I'm going to click on OK. Here's my the counter from buyers. That's the folder the signed documents will be stored in. The documents that we need to sign are stored in our original counter from sellers. I can open it to double check, ensure that we have the correct forms. Here is our counter offer from the sellers. We're going to counter their counter of 615. We're going to counter at 610. So I know I have my correct files here. I'm going to click on the e-sign button, create a new packet. As you're well aware, we do not select these two main level 1 to 4 family forms. We scroll down to our signed documents. We select the counter from the counter subfolder and select the 1 to 4 family, the third party. Click on close. What's our key? What do we need to remember to do? Choose a folder for return signed documents. It's my favorite thing. I click on that. I go to signed documents. Counter the counter from buyers. I select counter the counter from buyers. Click on done. Now we're ready to click on next and select our parties. Who's going to counter? Beverly and Shannon. I think I'm going to dream about Beverly and Shannon tonight. You might as well. Click on close. I'm leaving the signing order as 1 and 2. Once again, once we get into DocuSign, we'll modify that. Okay, tick tock, tick tock. Now I'm in DocuSign. What am I going to do? I've got 6:15 here, correct? Yes, that is the counter. I need to be able to put text fields in this document that will allow me to edit and update it. Here's the key. If I assign the text fields with the counter offer to Beverly, Beverly will need to be signing order number 1, and Shannon will need to be signing order number 2. If I make them both signing order number 1, and Shannon, I assign the data fields or the text fields to Beverly. If Shannon opens up the email first, guess what's going to happen? It will be blank, and all I'll have to say is, Shannon, trust me, sign it as an agent. Well, you know that's not going to fly. So here's the process that you need to go through to edit a document in DocuSign and then have it signed simultaneously by 2 parties. We're going to click on the Go Back button, go back in DocuSign. I am going to add a recipient, and that's going to be myself at this point, which is Captain Kirk. I'm the buyer's agent. I add selected. Captain Kirk is going to need to be a sign action. The key is Shannon and Beverly will both be signing order number 2. Captain Kirk is signing order number 1. What does that mean? I'm going to click on the signing order link so that we can look at a diagram of our signing order, and what will happen is this. Captain Kirk is number 1. I'm going to assign those text fields that have the counter offer amount, $610,000, to Captain Kirk. Once Captain Kirk approves that amount, then it will automatically go to Shannon and Beverly, and they can sign simultaneously. With that, then I don't have to worry about, as the buyer's agent, making sure that I schedule one before the other. I'm going to click on Close. To do that, I've got Captain Kirk 1, Shannon and Beverly 2. I'm going to click on Next. When I click on Next, I'll scroll down to where we want to place the counter. Notice, I select Captain Kirk. The first thing I want to do is use a markup field and strike out the 615. To do that, I select Captain Kirk. Notice the categories: standard fields, custom fields, merge fields, markup tools. I select markup tools. The markup tool that I have available is Align. That markup tool is assigned or associated with Captain Kirk. I click on the Line tool. I come over to the 615 and mark out the 615. Now, if I want to change the color from red to black, I have the strikeout or the line tool selected. I can come over to the properties on the right hand side and click on the black box, and it changes it to black. Now that I've marked out the 615, I need to put an alternate amount. I've got Captain Kirk selected. I'm going to go back to the standard fields, scroll down, select a text box. I'm going to place the text box above the 615, size it down. To key in a value in that text box, I'm going to come to the right hand side in the properties, 610. I'm going to key in 610. It's a little light. I'm going to scroll down in the properties pane, click on the drop down arrow, select bold. I could increase my font size if I choose. I don't. Now, there is another field I also need to modify or mark up since I'm representing the buyers, and at this point I'm going to say the cash amount that they're going to put down. I still have Captain Kirk selected. On the left hand side, I'm going to go to Markup Tools, click on the Line tool, come over here to the 300. It remembers that it's black. I'm going to strike out 300. I'm still Captain Kirk. I'm going to go to the standard fields, select a text box, Place it here. I'm going to place it up here so I have some room. I'm going to size it down. I'll go from the left-hand side. I'm on the right-hand pane in the properties box. Add text 310. I'm marking up the amount that I'm putting down. Let me come here and bold it. It is already bold. You can tell I click on it. Now, what do? I've marked up my document with Captain Kirk. Now I can select Shannon, drag Shannon's initials here, size it down, select Beverly, have her initial this markup. I will also have Shannon initial the cash amount and Beverly initial the cash amount. Now, if I wanted them to initial the strike-through amounts, I could. If we wanted to start over completely in DocuSign and Zip Forms with a clean form, we could. The purpose of this exercise is to show that, number one, Captain Kirk, that's myself. I represent the buyers. I'm sending this to them to sign. I can mark up my document, the signed document by the seller, so we don't need to get them to re-sign it. Add the buyer's initials. That's great. That's the first thing that we're going to do. Once we've added the initial fields for Shannon and Beverly, the next step, and I misspoke earlier in this video, and hopefully I've corrected it with some notes, is we want to have Captain Kirk, the buyer's agent, approve or decline it. Mr. Spock, the listing agent, is going to do something new. He's going to specify the recipients who need to sign, i.e. as sellers, seller 1 and seller 2. Why? Because they are going to accept the counter, and then Captain Kirk will then key in the executed date. So, to complete that process, I'm going to go back. My Captain Kirk has marked up the documents, Shannon and Beverly, signing order number 2. Before I send it on to the listing agent, I'm going to click Add Recipient, and I'm going to add Captain Kirk. Signing order number 3, action needs to sign, and I'm going to have this Captain Kirk, the green Captain Kirk, approve it and or decline it. I just want it to stop one more time in this automated process at me, Captain Kirk, to make sure I can approve it and decline it. Here's the new feature. The buyers need to sign as well. I don't want to send the offer to the buyers. I want to send the offer to Mr. Spock. Allow Mr. Spock to add the buyers' names and email. How many times do you have agents who contact you and say, would you DocuSign this for me? Well, this is a way that we can do it with a professional courtesy. Send it to them and let them key in their seller's name and address, email address. To do that, I'm going to go back. I'm going to add another recipient, Mr. Spock. Did I just call him Dr. Spock? Please forgive me. Mr. Spock. Add selected. He's signing order number 4. His action is not going to be needs to sign. It's going to be specify recipients. When I select specify recipients and underneath add additional recipients, notice what it does. It places placeholders. Seller number 1. I do not know their name and email. Mr. Spock's going to key that in. I'm going to add a second placeholder. Seller number 2. I'm going to make them signing order number 5. Notice what happens. If I scroll up and I go to signing order link to see my diagram, this is where it's so important. Captain Kirk marks up the document. Shannon and Beverly sign the counter to the counter. Captain Kirk then approves it. Mr. Spock will then receive it, and he will add the 2 recipients for the placeholders, seller number 1 and seller number 2. Now, in this exercise, Mr. Spock does not have the authority to put the signature tags on my document for my 2 placeholders. I, as Captain Kirk, do that within DocuSign. The only role that Mr. Spock has is to key in seller number 1's name and email address, seller number 2's name and email address. I'm going to click on Close. Next. Here, I know my sellers need to sign. I'm going to come to the right, click on seller number 1. They're going to initial the change. I'll size it down. I'll bring the initial over here. Seller number 2, initial, and initial. Yes, it gets complicated, but the entire process, once again, is automated. Last but not least, what can we do? I'm going to go back one more time. Add a recipient. I can just say roll buyer's agent. That's me. Select me from the drop-down list. Captain Kirk. I'm signing order number 6. I need to sign. I go back next. What am I going to do? It's at this point that I will add as Captain Kirk after everyone has signed. Notice, Captain Kirk markup, Captain Kirk approve and decline, Captain Kirk, that's me. Executed date. Yes, it's complex, but it allows me to automate it. I set it up in the morning. I send it out. The parties begin to sign it. They sign it in the appropriate order. That order is listed in your outline. It shows you everything that you can do. I can hit the road and run and not have to worry as the buyer's agent about setting up and signing in and continuing to create DocuSign forms along the way, or DocuSign envelopes. So it's a great feature. With this exercise, if your class is not an advanced class, because oftentimes that happens, you can skip it if you need to. But if you get an advanced group, I've seen it before, they love the process and they see what they have the ability to do. So now I'm going to click on Send, send it, and close this exercise.